I'm Roy Lee Lindsay with the North Carolina Pork Council, and I want everyone to remember bacon makes everything better.
Our next guest was the 2023 Atlantic Coast Conference Coach of the Year as the head coach of the Pitt Panthers. Roughly 30 years after, he was the North Carolina High School Basketball Player of the Year and a state champion for Southview High School here in Fayetteville. In between, of course, our guest, Jeff Capel III, was an All-ACC player and a two-time Duke captain who helped the Blue Devils to a pair of first-place ACC finishes and the 1994 NCAA championship game. And he was Mike Krzyzewski's associate head coach when Duke won the national title in 2015. As a head coach himself, Jeff took VCU and Oklahoma to the NCAA tournament, leading the Sooners all the way to the Elite Eight in 2008. And he took Pitt to the big dance just last year. He's now in his sixth season with the Panthers, who defeated Duke at Duke last month and just recently beat Virginia in Charlottesville, ending the Cavaliers' national best 23-game home winning streak. Jeff Capel, welcome back to the David Glenn Show. A slightly belated happy birthday to you, and welcome for the first time to the new North Carolina Sports Network, Coach. How are you?
DG, man, always great being with you. Appreciate you having me on and saying all those really good things about me.
Right back at you, my friend. We're going to get to the basketball in a minute, but even though you've been with me for 20-some years, I like to try to get to know you a little better each time you visit. In the midst of a 6-month-long grinder of a season, does someone in your world, your wife, your staff, your players, or somebody else, force you to celebrate your 49th birthday earlier this week and just temporarily get you out of tunnel vision mode?
Yeah, my wife and my family, my wife and my kids, they do an unbelievable job of helping me stay balanced. We celebrated it on Sunday, kind of coincided with the Super Bowl, opened up presents. They sang happy birthday to me and did all of that stuff. So it was great. On my actual birthday, we practiced. We traveled to Charlottesville. My players surprised me that night at our snack. They had a cake for me, and they sang happy birthday, which was really cool.
You happen to be visiting the David Glenn Show during Valentine's Day week, and I don't believe I've ever asked you this question. Let's give your amazing wife, Kanika, a shout out. For those who do not know, Coach Capel has an amazing resume that also includes literally marrying a Duke cheerleader who went on to be a Yale Law School graduate, an attorney, a law professor, and, of course, the mother of those 3 children he just mentioned. For the record, Coach, back in the 90s, did the Duke basketball star pursue the Duke cheerleader, or did the Duke cheerleader pursue the Duke basketball star?
Well, it's interesting because she was a year behind me in school, and we were cordial. We spoke. We saw each other, but we never really had a conversation until after I graduated and towards the end of her senior year. I was back in town. My season was over with where I was playing, and I came back in town, and we ended up hanging out, and that was in April of '98, and we've been together ever since.
Well, she comes from an amazing family in her own right. So just one serious question. How has she either impacted you as a person over these 20-plus years, or maybe even helped? We hear stories about the importance of a coach's wife, maybe even helped your coaching career and success.
Well, she's been instrumental in everything that I've done. She's definitely made me better. She's made me see the world a little bit different. She helps me to understand my players and perhaps some of the things that they're going through from a different lens. She's someone that I bounce things off of, just ideas that I have or things that are going on. It takes a very, very special woman to be married to a coach and to endure all the things that happen in our careers. Our careers are very public. And there are a lot of opinions about us. And she's been with me through it all, the good, the bad, when it's been very, very tough. I think one of the things that helps is that her father is in politics and is a lawyer himself. So she grew up not around sports, but understanding, kind of what, or being around, living through what her dad had to go through. And I think that's helped her be an incredible wife to me, but probably more important than that, an amazing mother to our kids.
Anyone who wants to learn more about those topics, research Dan Blue, that would be your wife's dad, and also research Coach Capel's late father, Jeff Capel II, just a fascinating guy and an amazing mentor to Jeff and many others, and a great basketball coach in his own right. Less than 1 week ago, Coach, I don't know how this happened. I know it was an off weekend for the Panthers, but Southview High School right here in Fayetteville retires your number 32 jersey. And I wasn't there, but you were there in person to give a really cool acceptance speech. It looked like a ton of family, friends, alumni, fans, old teammates were there. I heard some heartwarming shout outs you did give to your late dad, but also the late coach at Southview, Ron Miller, a man that you described as a second father figure type. I know you are a tunnel vision guy, but what emotions were stirred this past weekend, a full 30 years after you wore that Southview uniform?
Well, it was pretty incredible, to be honest with you. My mom contacted me probably in early December and told me they wanted to do it. The Southview wanted to do it. And originally what they had hoped for, we played Duke at Duke on a Saturday. I think the game was at 8 p.m. They knew that we would probably be flying in on Friday. And so they wanted to know if I could do it then, if I could fly in with the team, come down that night, that evening. And I didn't want to do that because we go and shoot the night before the game, and I wanted to be with my team. And so I talked to her about a different time. I knew we had the bye after NC State, and fortunately that worked out. But being back there, man, I hadn't been back in that gym since they dedicated the gym to Coach Miller. And that was probably the early 2000s. And it just conjured up so many memories. I spent a lot of time in that gym. I would go there at night. I was pretty boring in high school. I didn't really go out. I didn't hang out. I was just always in the gym or hanging with my family and certain friends that I had. But I spent a lot of time in that gym. And when I walked back in there, all of those memories came back. And just the amazing time I had with my teammates, the amazing mentorship and relationship that I had with Coach Miller, just all those things came, flooding back to me. And it was pretty emotional. I had a lot of my former teammates, were there. So it was a really, really cool thing to be a part of.
That's one more thing. If anybody wants to check it out, there's all sorts of video of Coach Capel standing there at midcourt. It's funny to see you on an orange tiger paw as the home. I freaked me out a little bit. I am old enough to remember you as a high school player, but I forgot y'all were also the orange tiger paw.
Yeah, and it was interesting standing there at half court when I was talking, and I'm standing there, and I remember I used to shoot from here, so I used to in those games, I had no problem. I guess that's why I don't have any problem with Blake Henson shooting from there. I understand it.
Oh man, I love your willingness to share so much about yourself with us and others. In sports, we talk a lot about impact players who make a positive difference. When it comes to our state's economy, the North Carolina pork industry is a true MVP. Each year, the pork industry plays an important role in supporting rural communities across our state. It contributes more than $10 billion a year to the North Carolina economy and supports more than 44,000 jobs. Learn more about their positive impact at ncpork.org. The North Carolina Pork Council, the foundational partner of the North Carolina Sports Network. We will get to basketball, of course. About a month ago, Coach, Pitt's record was 10-7. You were nowhere near the NCAA tournament conversation. Since then, you're 6-1. Road victory at Duke, you mentioned. Georgia Tech, at NC State, at Virginia recently, plus that home win over what is really a good Wake Forest team. How do you summarize what changed from 10-7 to 6-1?
Well, I think what happened to us, when we started the ACC play, and not the one in December, we had an early December game against Clemson where we lost a close one at home. But when we got to January, late December, early January, when we started, I don't think our young guys really understood what it takes to win. And we played hard, and it took us kind of getting smacked. Like, we played Syracuse the first game after Christmas, and it's a tie game with 4 minutes left after we had blown an 11-point lead. But we couldn't get stops, and we couldn't score. We couldn't come up with the big plays. We come home and we play North Carolina. We held them the first 6 minutes without scoring. But we only had 8 points. And so just the understanding of how to win, how to fight, what's required. We were playing hard, but we had to go to a different level. And then we had the 2 games where we got blown out by Duke here. That's the one game where we dropped the rope. And I really think that affected us in our next game against Syracuse at home. And I thought the best thing for us, David, was going on the road. Even though it was to Cameron, it was going to be a very tough game against a top 10 team. I just felt like we would perform better on the road, just getting away from, our environment. It was pretty negative. Yeah. But just us being away and just us. And I thought we'd play well against Duke. I thought we had grown. I thought we had gotten better. It just hadn't equated to wins. And that game really gave us the confidence that, look, the stuff that we're doing, we are getting better. It works. Them understanding how much harder we had to play, learning how to fight. It's one thing to say it, but understanding how to do it. And our young guys have really, really grown up and have gotten better.
You wore the Duke uniform, so you know how rare it is for the Blue Devils to lose on that home court. I just mentioned, Virginia had literally the longest home winning streak in the entire country, and you guys go there. Part of the answer might have been what you just said about maybe there's a little less noise when you guys are traveling together. But how else do you describe the essentials of winning on the road against good teams whose home records are off the charts good?
Yeah, I just, it requires, anytime you go on the road, you have to be unbelievably connected. You have to be tough. And the attention to detail of the little things goes a long way. And I think our guys have learned how to do that. Certainly when you're on the road, you don't have as much noise or as many distractions. Going to Duke, facing that, I think the thing I was really proud of is we went straight from Durham. We actually spent that night after the game, and then we flew out the next morning and went straight to Atlanta. And I remember when I was an assistant at Duke, when I worked there for Coach K, he used to always talk about, and he had the number, I can't remember what it was, but it was something like 90+% of the time when a team beats Duke, they lose the next game. He used to call it the Duke hangover.
Wow.
And I talked to my team about that. The very next day when we started getting prepared for Georgia Tech, I talked to them about, look, we did an amazing thing in how we played. We need to follow this up because this is normally what happens. And so I was as proud of that one because Georgia Tech has beaten North Carolina at Georgia Tech. They've beaten Duke at Georgia Tech. And so they've been really good at home. And so for us to be able to do that, and then like you mentioned against Virginia, we've learned how to fight. That's the biggest thing. And it sounds simple, but when you have a bunch of new guys, we had 3 starters and our 6th man essentially, that this is their first time ever playing in the ACC.
Yeah.
So to just understand 2 of them, the freshmen, their first time playing college basketball. And so it took a little bit longer for them to understand how you have to fight.
Hey folks, David Glenn, right here in Raleigh. One of my favorite restaurants for many years has been The Oak, Scratch Kitchen and Bourbon Bar. It's located on Lake Boone Trail, which happens to be a perfect location for a great meal and beverage if you're on your way to nearby Carter Finley Stadium or perhaps PNC Arena for a concert, Wolfpack or Hurricanes game, or other event. The menu is incredibly tasty and creative. The atmosphere is a lot of fun. The bourbon options are as high-end and varied as you'll find anywhere. The staff is super classy and first-rate, and I've just always loved the people, the food, and the overall vibe there. When I took Carolina Hurricanes owner Tom Dundon to lunch, yes, meaning the billionaire who owns the hockey team, I took him to The Oak. Seriously, it's that good. Learn more or make a reservation by visiting their website, theoakraleigh.com. That's theoakraleigh.com. Special thanks to Nick and Haley and their team for joining the family here at the David Glenn Show and the new North Carolina Sports Network. Speaking of freshmen, I'm just a media guy, but the two most valuable and productive freshmen that I have seen include your starting point guard or combo guard, Bub Carrington, and then Duke's Jared McCain. And they're both on the NBA's radar already. You may want to dodge the second half of this question, and I get it if you do. But what has Bub brought to the Panthers? And how would you cast a ballot or advise someone like me or somebody else to cast a ballot as a voter if it came to the ACC's Rookie of the Year honor, which is a really prestigious thing, and there's always more than one really good candidate?
Yeah. Well, the first thing, to answer the first part, he brings a guy, number one, that's really talented. We knew that when we signed him. I thought he was underrated and undervalued, certainly not by us, but by the national scouting services or people like that. The other thing is that I knew that he had big upside, and I knew that he was a worker. I had a chance. I've known Little Bub because his dad is Bub. I've known Little Bub since he was little, and have a great relationship with his father. Developed a great relationship with him, and I knew he was a worker. Now, I'd be lying if I said I knew he would be this good this quickly. That took us all by a little bit of a surprise. But as we saw him in the summer, we saw him just keep getting better and better. He has an unbelievable feel for the game for a young guy. David, he's really, really smart. And that's very, very important. Like, he can pick things up very quickly, even in the midst of a game. He's able to dissect what a defense is trying to do and know the counters. So that's how he's made us better. The other guy, man, that's made us a lot better is Jalen Lowe. We have two really, really good freshman guards. And I think Jalen is playing as well as any freshman in our league. I think we have an outstanding group of freshmen. You mentioned McCain. Man, I've been really impressed with him. He's strong. He's physical. He seems like he has a great joy of playing basketball. Yeah. Obviously, the freshman point guard at North Carolina, Elliot Cadeau. I mean, to be able to step into that program and to put everyone in their place, put RJ where he can just score, and Armando, and to be able to do that. I think Georgia Tech has two outstanding freshmen, the big fella Dongo and the point guard George. And so we have some outstanding freshmen in this league that have really performed well in pressure moments. And I think it's a testament to how good our league is, how well these coaches have recruited, and the impact that these guys have been able to make. For me, I'm biased. I think Little Bub should be the Rookie of the Year if you look at what he's done and the impact that he's had. But I think it's going to be a very, very tight race, and we have a lot of worthy candidates.